There's only 21 million Bitcoin. That's all there can ever be in the world. In 100 years, there's still only 21 million Bitcoin. The second largest company in crypto failed last year, FTX. We've seen Celsius fail, we've seen Voyager fail, we've seen a lot of huge centralized companies. So therefore, you have to take your Bitcoin and own it yourself.
Hello, Dinny. How are you?
Morning, guys.
Morning.
This is Dinny Collins, a lifetime entrepreneur and founder of the Bitcoin with Dinny. He has an amazing kind of structured, would you call it, a workshop about retiring early through the use of Bitcoin. He believes that Bitcoin removes all the confusion, mystery, and complexity, delivering this, easy blueprint to follow. And the idea that, we've had somebody on to talk about gold, we've had somebody to talk about blockchain, and I think it's only fair that we have somebody who actually is a avid Bitcoin believer and user. I have just bought the book, Divided by 21 Million.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a great book. So I am trying to pick up myself as well. But I just thought, because we don't get someone who was fully passionate and understands the utilization of how the future can change with Bitcoin. I thought it was very important to invite Dinny on. So welcome to Rise, mate.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here. Morning, everyone.
Oh,
hello.
Hello. Sorry. My gallery thing's gone. Thank you for joining us, Dinny. We really do appreciate it. And as Sean said, we've been continuing this conversation because it started, Sean, didn't it, with a viewer saying, well, where shall I be investing my money then? And so Sean is much more au fait with this conversation than me. So I'm literally going to leave you in charge of this, Sean, and I'm going to be observing. Go for it.
So first and foremost, can you start off with a few Bitcoin myths and what you would kind of say to kind of, educate people on certain myths?
Sure, deadly. The first thing I think where people seem to struggle is they say that Bitcoin isn't backed by anything, and when you dig into this statement, it's not true. And what I try and help people understand before I try and help them understand Bitcoin, try and help them understand our own currency. So whether it's the euro or the pound sterling or the dollar or whatever it is, but they are actually what's called a fiat currency, and they are actually backed by nothing. So that's why there's nothing behind the money. And that's why over my lifetime and everyone's lifetime, you'll see that the cost of things always gets more expensive. But the cost of things versus the increase in our wages, they don't go up the same. It seems to be the cost of stuff has gone up faster than our wages increase. So you could say that, oh, my granddad only earned £80 a week, sure, and I'm earning 500 now. But in relative terms of what your grandfather could purchase for 80 quid, he was a lot wealthier. And so that's the first thing. And Bitcoin is similar to gold. If you've had someone on chatting about gold, that's fantastic, because as I see and understand Bitcoin as the first step to understand that it's more than this, but the first step is just to compare it to digital gold, that it shares all of the amazing properties that made gold money for thousands of years, but it's just digitized a lot of them. And with most digital, or with all digital variants of anything that we digitize, they're an order of magnitude better. And what backs gold is energy. So we've all seen the programs where they mine and they've all the machinery and the people working, and they're burning diesel, and then at the end of the week they're holding up their hand with a bit of dust, and they're like, oh, and you're like watching the show going, all that, it paid for that bit of dust. And that's why gold is valuable. If I could just pull out a shovel, shove it in the ground and pull up a couple of ounces, that would devalue the gold. So I'm a gold investor among other asset classes, and a gold miner is basically my enemy, because every time they dig for gold, they're devaluing what my gold investment, just like the European Central Bank, are also my enemy. Unfortunately, my national currency, because every time they print euros, they devalue the euros that are in my bank. Now, the difference between printing euros in the bank, it doesn't cost energy because it's backed by nothing. The difference with printing gold is it is backed by energy, so it's difficult to do. And then where does Bitcoin sit in? Well, Bitcoin is also backed by energy because it takes electricity to mine.
It's mined, yeah.
Yeah, mining is just a term, but it's basically it takes electricity to create Bitcoin. So it's backed by energy in that electricity has to come from somewhere. So unless the only way to mine it is to exchange energy for it, and that's what backs it. And the fact that it uses so much energy is what protects the value of Bitcoin. And just like the energy usage protects the value of gold, we can like it or lump it, but it's use of energy. And who's to dictate how people use your energy? If you're going to purchase the energy, surely you have a choice to use it as you will. But even with the energy front, Bitcoin's incentivized to use green energy. So Bitcoin miners is a competition globally, and they're always searching for the cheaper energy because that's how you are profitable. And just to finish my big long rambling, Bitcoin helps to build out of green energy because all the renewable energies, because they're inconsistent, you have to overbuild those systems. But the problem is, what do you do with the power when you've overbuilt them? You need a system such as Bitcoin mining, which can literally just be flicked on with a switch to absorb the power when it's not needed. And when the power is needed, it's a flick of a switch and you can allow the power to go to the grid. So it's stabilizing renewable energy grids among being sound money.
Wow. See, a lot of people don't understand this. And then, so the main thing for me is that obviously someone just put in the comments as well, haven't we missed the boat with Bitcoin? I mean, they're so expensive now. And this is what people don't realize. So for one, can you talk about the scarcity side of Bitcoin and how that can always prove that, you know, because it's just another form of investment. That's what people need to realize. You know, you're all very well having your cash in the bank, but as you said, it's constantly devalued, which means your time as a human on this planet is not being paid correctly because the time and energy is devalued by the fiat currencies being printed. So in terms of, I understand there's, you know, you've got the halving, is that correct? There's a halving. So yeah, if we mention the halving, and if we talk about, you know, just the scarcity of Bitcoin as a whole, to circumvent the idea of what fiat currency is.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I'll just touch on have I missed a boat with Bitcoin in case we don't revisit it, because I know a lot of people think that. And the short answer is no, definitely not. For years, people have said they've missed the boat. And when you truly understand Bitcoin, the irony is you have the exact same opportunity today as someone had 10 years ago. The only thing you don't have is the certainty. Like today, we have the certainty of in 10 years, well, Bitcoin's worth X. But when you understand Bitcoin, it's a money programmed to go up in value. So therefore, whenever you arrive to Bitcoin, it's volatile. I say it's over a 4-year time frame. Unless you're prepared to hold it for 4 years minimum, it's probably not the asset for you because it's very volatile. But volatility isn't risk. Volatility is the alpha. That's what generates your returns. But the first thing I learned about Bitcoin, Sean and Sonia, was that there was only 21 million units or tokens. And as an entrepreneur, who I suppose anyone who's in business or any business is always trying to create scarcity. You're always trying to do something better than your competition and make it, no, you have to buy from me, only I can do this. So
Same with diamonds. That's why diamonds are hidden in banks and stuff.
Yeah.
There's enough diamonds in the world.
So I understand scarcity and value. So then I started to explore that. Well, if there's only 21 million, that's not that much in this world of 7 billion people. And then I suppose it's called going down the rabbit hole, and you really do go down the rabbit hole. And what I'll do is I'll just talk a little bit about the halving, how Bitcoins are created, a couple of key facts, and I think it'll leave people with some a basic understanding of why I believe this has value. There's only 21 million Bitcoin. That's all there can ever be in the world. In 100 years, there's still only 21 million Bitcoin. In 100 years, I don't know how many physical properties there are. If I become a property investor, I don't know how much gold will be mined. I don't know how much euros will be in existence. You know, I don't know anything. The only thing I can speculate is there will be more, meaning whatever I hold in gold, in property, and currency, it's going to get devalued or diluted. Okay, but I know in 100 years' time there's only 21 million Bitcoin. Now, at the moment, there's 19 million mined in circulation, created. So that means there's 2 million left to be mined. How long will it take to mine them? Will be most people's question. It's over 100 years. So unfortunately, unless medicine progresses a lot, we won't be around to see the last mining of the Bitcoin. Now, how it works is this process. You mentioned it, Sean. It's called the halving. At the moment, there's 6 Bitcoin created every 10 minutes. Every 4 years, programmatically, this is cut in half. So in 2020, there was 12 Bitcoins mined. That cut to 6. This creates what's called a supply shock, and it took the price of Bitcoin from around $6,000 to over 60,000. Okay, now I'm going to explain why I believe that happens. Let's say I'm the only Bitcoin miner on the planet. I'm the only exchange, the only place you can purchase Bitcoin. And I have a water bottle in my hand. Imagine that's 1 Bitcoin and I have another 5 of them here on the shelf. Well, if 6 people walk into my office and they all buy a Bitcoin and I sell all 6 of them and out the door they go, 10 minutes later I have 6 on the shelf, and if the demand is constant and I sell 6 Bitcoins, the price stays exactly where we are, provided no one who holds Bitcoin decides to sell it. But a date comes in April next year when I'm only going to have 3 on the shelf because we'll have gone through that halving. Now, if this was so guess what happens? 6 people walk in, but I've only 3 products on the shelf. So now there's a problem. Now, if this was any other good or service or gold or anything, property market, this is telling the free market, the demand is higher than the supply, increase the supply. And entrepreneurs would go and create and whatever the good service commodity happened to be. But in terms of Bitcoin, we don't have this. This is how it's programmed to work and nobody can change it. So the only other variable now is the price. There's 6 people looking at 3 of them, and 3 of them have done their homework and they go, this is so scarce. This is the scarcest thing. This is the only actual asset. I can take my wealth with me to the afterlife in Bitcoin. I can't do that with anything else. This is so big. I need to own one of those Bitcoin. I'll give 35 grand for it. And 3 of them buy for 35 grand. The price of Bitcoin moves to 35 grand. 10 minutes later, I've three on the shelf, 6 come into the office, plus the 3 that didn't get it 10 minutes ago, plus 6 people are after here. And you know, the price of this thing just went up in a 10-minute time frame. And wind that on a month into a bull market, and I have 1,000 people in the office, and I still only have 3 Bitcoin on the table, and they're bidding up these crazy prices, and Bitcoin gets overbought and overvalued, and then there's a crash. Okay, but the thing you need to know about Bitcoin is each crash is higher than the subsequent one. So I call it a floor. So every time we go back to that floor, it's a higher floor, it's a higher floor. And this happening cycle happens every 4 years for the rest of our life. And that's why Bitcoin is just getting scarcer and scarcer and scarcer over the next 10 years till there's only fractions of a Bitcoin being mined. And when people say, am I too late to Bitcoin? It's like you can own fractions of a Bitcoin now for, you know, maybe 500 euros, you can get 1 million Satoshis. A Satoshi is the smallest unit of a Bitcoin. There's 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin. So I don't buy Bitcoins, but every month my goal is to own a little bit more Bitcoin than I owned the month before, and I exchange some of my fiat, some of my money that's programmed to go down in value, my euros programmed to go down in value, and I exchange them for money that's programmed to go up in value. And I accept the volatility, and that's why it's money that I don't need. I'm happy to invest it for minimum 4 years.
Brilliant. I hope that, Sonia, did that kind of...
Yeah, it actually did. The trouble is, Dinny, and I'm not alone here because I can see that in some of the comments, is a lot of this just is like, oh, it's when we have to get to grips with that which we're unfamiliar with. And Bitcoin is surrounded by a lot of negative PR, and some of it is being mentioned here in the comments, and which you've already addressed some of it. Marvelous Miss V says negative things I hear about Bitcoin, it's used for nefarious reasons.
So is cash.
Excessive
Yeah,
mining.
it's a much higher percentage used for crime. We've actually done that. The US dollar is something like 15% or some huge figure. Bitcoin is like 0.02. Because you can see it's very transparent, Bitcoin. You can see everything on the blockchain.
Well, that's exactly why I was so glad when Sean said he was bringing you on, because I knew that you'd be like a myth buster for us. And that's what because, you know, in order to be able to have informed consent about anything, you need to know what on earth you're talking about, right? And it just seems like such a hole to me. But the other thing that Marvelous Miss V says, which is, I think I've lost it now, which was about the excessive mining as well. Excessive mining and it will disappear, which you've already talked about. You said that there's a ceiling on it. But if somebody was coming to you today and said, look, I have this glut of money and I need to do something with it, you would have no problem in saying invest in Bitcoin.
What I would try to encourage the person to do, or what I do in my consulting office, is I would educate them first, so you understand what you own. And what I would encourage any of the listeners who are coming up with all these fantastic questions, and it's brilliant to bring them up because that's where we get the constructive conversation. But I'd encourage people to read an actual Bitcoin book, is what I say, because a book will take you through the journey and a book will address every single question. Whereas when we're doing a podcast, I can only get to so many questions. We only have time to address so many, and only so many questions come up. But I really encourage people, like I suggested it to Sean, Everything Divided by 21 Million, quite an easy enough book. I call it the Transport University. I don't have time to sit down and read a book. So Tony Robbins taught me, just every time you're moving around, driving, walking, loading dishwasher, I'm listening to an audio book. So I'd encourage people to do that. But one thing I will say is, yes, it's new, but Bitcoin is basically digital cash. There's a war on physical cash right now. And it's pretty clear to me that over this decade, it's being phased out. The amount of businesses in Ireland, even our national car test now doesn't accept our national currency in cash. So we're being funneled into what's called digital euros, or central bank digital money. Now, this is the opposite to cash. Bitcoin works the same as cash, okay? It's a money you can own, just like your physical cash. You can take it out of the bank and hold it in your hand. No one can take it from you. Your digital dollars or digital sterling or digital euros, they'll sit on our mobile phones, and we can never own that. If we do something that whoever's controlling that doesn't like, that can be switched off. And we see that happening. We've seen it happen with Canadian truckers. We've seen it happen with the Russians, and we've seen it happen in China, that people are literally getting fines for crossing the road, you know, on not a green light and stuff, and they're getting their names put up on billboards.
Right, like a social credit score. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's scary. That's far too much centralized power. So Bitcoin gives you power back because it's money you can own. It's money you can spend permissionlessly. I don't know what way it looks to me. There's carbon credits coming in. They want to attach it to our money. Like, I might have a different ideal on how my government tells me I should eat. I disagree with a lot of that. I'm in the health, spent nearly 2 decades in the health industry, and the food pyramid made no sense to me. First day in college, I'm like, we're all healthy young lads and ladies. None of us eat like this. We know you don't eat that much processed carbohydrate to be fit. Why do we have to teach this? And you're telling us to tell overweight people this is how they should. No. And we shouldn't eat an egg. I'm like, an egg is the most natural food on the planet, and here it is being demonized. So that was my sort of entry into, okay, maybe I can't trust all the centralization, and that information isn't quite accurate. Although the social consensus is, this is all correct. So Bitcoin is a money you can own, a money you can spend permissionlessly, and a money with a fixed supply. They're the 3 key things. And fiat currency is a money you can't own, a money you can't spend permissionlessly, and a money with an unlimited supply.
Phenomenal, really. I mean, but people are also talking about losing money in the comments as well. I think somebody's son lost 20K. Can
I address that?
Yes, please do.
So I'll give you a fact. Nobody in the history of Bitcoin, and everyone who's invested into it, has ever lost money by holding it for 4 years. Yes, someone can come into Bitcoin and buy it at the very high, like typical retail, buy high, sell low. Okay. But nobody who has, we call it diamond hands because the volatility can be sickening. Okay. But even if you bought Bitcoin at the very high in 2017, you bought it at 19,000, you held it for 4 years, you're selling it at 60,000. Okay. Yeah. Now for 3 years, you would watch your 20,000 investment trade down to being 1,000, 3,000, 4,000. Okay. And if you sold it then, now you did lose money. You crystallized your losses. But that's why I always communicate this hard and fast rule. It's 4 years minimum. If you're not prepared to hold for 4 years, you shouldn't touch it. Now, there is another way. There is another way people can lose their Bitcoin. And that's by not understanding how to custody it correctly. You buy it and you leave it on a centralized exchange. Okay. And the exchange gets into difficulties and they go insolvent. Now you've lost. You're going to get some Bitcoin back, but you might get, who knows, 20 cents on the dollar. And we've seen the second largest company in crypto fail last year, FTX. We've seen Celsius fail. We've seen Voyager fail. We've seen a lot of huge centralized companies. So therefore, you have to take your Bitcoin and own it yourself, okay? And you store it on a hardware wallet. Now, with that, guys, comes risk. It's impossible to be zero risk. The risk here now transfers to you. You've no counterparty risk, but now you've custody risk. Do you mind it correctly? Are you capable of remembering a password? Because if you potentially forget the password and you don't have it written down properly, now those Bitcoins are lost. So there's a degree of responsibility to owning Bitcoin. But like life's all about responsibility.
Sure it is. Chrome wants to know if it can be hacked.
Bitcoin has never been hacked. And the reason why you can't hack Bitcoin is because it's backed by energy. This is the connection Bitcoin has to the real world. My father was trying to understand Bitcoin. He was like, it's digital, sure, you can just hack it. And my dad understands the physical world. So I says, Dad, see that anvil there? We're in a shed, big heavy weight. I says, you can push all the buttons on you want on a computer, but it's not going to move that anvil. To move that anvil, you need physical, real world energy, okay, to move that anvil. And and this is how Bitcoin, because of its connection to energy, the only way you can attack it is to have more energy than Bitcoin. Now, at the moment, Bitcoin runs on these specialist computers called ASIC miners. They generate 3.5 Earths worth of power. Okay, so if you took all our mobile phones, all our computers, all our data centers, and turned them all into Bitcoin miners, you're still 2.5 Earths short, because these Bitcoin miners are so specialist and the mining network is so big. It's over 200 million times more powerful than the second largest supercomputer. So it's simply a case of you need more energy to attack Bitcoin, just like in the real physical world. If you imagine the only way to take someone's property, without the legal structure, because this sits above the legal structure, is by using physical force, like what Russia are doing in Ukraine. That's against the law, Okay, but it's not stopping Russia. Russia have more physical power, and they're deciding that they want that property.
Yeah,
We don't back the proxy war over here, but I respect your opinion. I do respect your opinion.
Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Look, Dinny, the thing is, right, I hope I can extend this. What I would like, Dinny, because you have a very easy to understand style about this. And I think what we'd like to do, if with your permission, is throw out to our audience, send in your Bitcoin questions, and we will bring Dinny back to address them. Is that okay, Dinny?
That'd be brilliant, yeah.
We'd love that. Go on, Sean. Do you want to finish it off?
Yeah, please. Yeah. Where can people find you, Dinny? I know I've obviously got you on Instagram, so if you just want to let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, Bitcoin with Dinny on all the social medias, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, and at Dinny Collins on Twitter. And just my website is bitcoinwithdinny.com.
And that's DINNY, yeah?
Correct.
Which our Scottish commenters are saying that means don't in Scottish.
Here, guys, will I tell you a really quick story?
Yes.
I went out with a Scottish girl for years, okay, and the Scots will laugh, and most people will. Most Irish people don't get this, but the relationship was difficult. She'd be shouting at me, "Dinny, do it!" So whatever she was telling me not to do, I was thinking she was saying, "No, do it and hurry up." So I'd be a problem. She'd be screaming, "Dinny, do it!" And I'm like, "I'm doing it!" Like.
Oh, bless you. Sean seems to have disappeared from the screen. We greatly appreciate you joining us this morning, giving more clarity to a conversation that we intend to keep having. Zoe says, too funny. Zoe is one of our Scots. Dinny, come back. We'll get some questions for you, everybody. Lovely. Dinny Collins, thank you so much. God bless you, darling. Take good care of yourself. Have a great week. Lovely.